The fluorescent lights were burning my eyes as I lay on the gurney, my stomach feeling like someone had set it on fire from the inside. The ER doctor's face was grim as he explained that my appendix had ruptured and I needed emergency surgery immediately. "We're calling your emergency contact now," the nurse said, already dialing. That contact was my wife, Elena. We'd been married for 7 years, and in all that time, I'd never doubted her love for me. Not once. Until that moment when my brother Tyler answered her phone instead. The nurse had it on speaker, and I heard Tyler's voice, casual and relaxed. "Hey, what's up?" The nurse explained the situation, her voice professional but urgent. "This is Memorial Hospital. We have your brother-in-law Brandon here. He's going into emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix. It's serious. We need his wife Elena here as soon as possible. There's a chance he might not make it through the night." I expected panic. I expected Elena to grab the phone and tell me she was on her way. Instead, I heard my brother laugh. That same easy laugh I'd heard 1,000 times at family barbecues and holiday dinners. "She's kind of busy right now," Tyler said. "Her hands are pretty occupied." Then I heard it. Elena's voice in the background, giggling like a teenager. "And my mouth," she added, and they both erupted into laughter. The nurse's face went white. She looked at me with something close to pity, then quickly ended the call. "Mr. Hendricks, I'm so sorry. We'll try another contact." But I couldn't hear her anymore. The pain in my abdomen was nothing compared to the pain that had just exploded in my chest. My wife was with my brother, and even knowing I might die on that operating table, she was more interested in whatever they were doing together than being by my side. They wheeled me into surgery, and the last thing I remember thinking before the anesthesia took hold was that if I survived this, everything was going to change. I'd built my life around Elena, around Tyler, around the family I thought we had together. But as the world faded to black, I realized that family had been a lie. And when I woke up, if I woke up, I was going to have to figure out what to do with that truth. Before we continue with Brandon's story, if you're finding this as shocking as I did when I first heard it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel shares real stories about betrayal, justice, and people who found the strength to rebuild their lives after everything fell apart. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Brandon's situation. And if you think he deserves justice for what happened, smash that like button. Now, let's get back to the story because what happens next is going to blow your mind. The surgery took 4 hours. When I woke up in recovery, the first face I saw wasn't Elena's. It was my father's. Richard Hendricks sat in the chair next to my bed, his weathered hands gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles were white. He was 68 years old, a retired construction foreman who'd built half the commercial buildings in our city with his own hands. He'd taught me everything I knew about hard work, integrity, and family loyalty. The look on his face told me he knew something was wrong. "Dad?" I croaked, my throat raw from the breathing tube they'd used during surgery. He leaned forward immediately, his face a mixture of relief and rage. "Brandon, thank God. The doctors said it was touch and go for a while there. Your appendix had completely ruptured. Another hour and you'd have been septic." I tried to sit up, but the pain was too intense. "Where's Elena?" The question came out automatically, even though part of me already knew I didn't want the answer. My father's jaw tightened. "She's not here, son. When the hospital called me after they couldn't reach her, I tried calling her myself. Tyler answered, said she was in the shower and couldn't come to the phone. This was 3 hours ago." 3 hours. I'd been dying, fighting for my life on an operating table, and my wife couldn't be bothered to show up. My brother couldn't be bothered to tell her it was urgent enough to get out of the shower. "Dad," I said quietly. "I heard them. When the nurse called." Tyler answered Elena's phone. They were laughing. She said she was busy with her hands and her mouth. My father's face went from red to purple. He stood up so fast the chair scraped against the linoleum floor. "Are you telling me what I think you're telling me?" I nodded, and something shifted in my father's expression. The anger was still there, but underneath it was something colder. Calculation. My father had always been a strategic thinker, someone who planned 3 moves ahead in every situation. "Son," he said, sitting back down and leaning in close, "we're going to handle this the right way, not the emotional way, not the way that ends with you in jail for assault, the right way." Over the next 2 hours, as I lay in that hospital bed recovering from surgery, my father and I made a plan. He called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Vance who specialized in divorce cases. He called his accountant, a man named Howard Chen who'd been managing the family's finances for 30 years. And he called my best friend since childhood, Derek Morrison, who happened to be a private investigator specializing in infidelity cases. By the time Elena finally showed up at the hospital 5 hours after my surgery, walking in like nothing was wrong, we had already set everything in motion. She breezed into my room wearing tight jeans and a low-cut top, her hair still damp from that shower she'd supposedly been taking 3 hours earlier. "Hey, babe," she said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "Sorry it took me so long to get here. I was at the gym and my phone was in my locker. I didn't see the calls until after my class." I looked at her, and saw a stranger. This woman who I'd shared a bed with for 7 years, who I'd trusted with my life, my business, my heart, was standing there lying to my face. And the crazy thing was, she was good at it. If I hadn't heard that phone call, if I didn't know for certain that Tyler had answered her phone, I might have believed her. "The gym," I repeated, my voice flat. "Yeah, you know how I've been trying to get back in shape. Spin class ran long." She squeezed my hand. "But I'm here now. How are you feeling?" "Like I almost died," I said, watching her face carefully. "The doctors said it was close. Another hour and I would have been septic. Could have died on the operating table." Elena's expression shifted to concern, but it felt performative, like she was playing a role. "Oh my God, that's so scary. But you're okay now, right? You're going to be fine?" My father, who had been standing silently in the corner the entire time, finally spoke up. "Elena, where's Tyler? I tried calling him after I couldn't reach you. He said you were in the shower. That was hours ago." I watched Elena's face carefully. There was a flicker of something, panic maybe, before she smoothed it over with a smile. "Tyler? I don't know. Why would you call him?" "Because he answered your phone," my father said, his voice cold as ice. Elena laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's impossible. My phone's been in my gym locker all afternoon." "Then how did Tyler answer it?" I asked. "How did he tell the nurse you were too busy to come to the hospital because your hands and mouth were occupied?" The color drained from Elena's face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know what you're talking about. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said, my voice steady despite the pain radiating from my abdomen. "I heard it myself. The nurse had the phone on speaker. Tyler answered. You laughed in the background. You both thought it was hilarious that I was dying and you couldn't be bothered to come." Elena took a step back from the bed, her eyes darting between my father and me. "Brandon, I swear, I don't know what you think you heard, but—" "I know what I heard," I interrupted. "And so did the nurse. And so did my father. And guess what, Elena? That's all being documented in my medical records right now. Time-stamped. Recorded. The hospital keeps logs of all emergency contact calls." Elena's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she was going to confess. Instead, she burst into tears. "I can't believe you're accusing me of something like this when you almost died. What kind of person does that?" My father stepped forward. "The kind of person who's been keeping detailed financial records for the past 7 years. The kind of person who's about to file for divorce and take everything you've been hiding from him." Elena stopped crying instantly. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the joint savings account you thought I didn't know about," my father said. "The one you and Tyler opened 6 months ago. The one that has $47,000 in it. All transferred from Brandon's business accounts in small amounts he wouldn't notice." Elena went white. "How did you—" "I'm a construction foreman who's been managing million-dollar projects for 40 years, my father said coldly. "You think I don't know how to track money?" I watched my wife's face cycle through emotions. Shock, fear, anger, and finally defiance. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," I said, "we can. My lawyer's been pulling records all afternoon. My accountant's been going through my business books. And my private investigator friend? He's been tracking your movements for the past 6 months. Turns out you and Tyler have been spending a lot of time together. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, all paid for with cash withdrawals from that secret account." Elena stood there, trapped, and I could see her calculating her next move. Finally, she played her last card. "Fine," she said, her voice going cold. "You want to know the truth? Yes, Tyler and I are together. We have been for almost a year, And you know what? He's better than you in every way that matters. He actually knows how to make me feel alive instead of boring me to death with your predictable life." My father moved toward her, and for a moment I thought he was going to physically throw her out of the room, but he controlled himself, stopping just inches from her face. "Get out," he said quietly. "Get out of this hospital. Get out of my son's house and get your lawyer ready, because what's coming next is going to destroy you." Elena grabbed her purse and headed for the door, but before she left, she turned back to me one last time. "You know what the sad thing is, Brandon? You were so trusting, so stupidly loyal, that you never even saw it coming. Tyler and I laughed about it all the time. How easy it was to fool you." After she left, I lay in that hospital bed feeling like I'd been gutted twice. Once by the ruptured appendix, and once by the revelation that the two people I'd trusted most in the world had been systematically betraying me for almost a year. My father sat back down, his hand on my shoulder. "Son, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're not just going to divorce her. We're going to make sure she and Tyler both pay for what they've done. But I need you to trust me and follow the plan." I looked at my father, this man who'd taught me everything about being a man, about honor and integrity and doing the right thing even when it's hard. And I realized that sometimes the right thing isn't mercy. Sometimes it's justice. "Tell me what to do," I said. And my father smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who'd built buildings that would stand for 100 years. And he was about to build a case that would bury my wife and brother forever. The next 2 weeks in the hospital were some of the strangest of my life. I had to stay for extended observation because the infection from my ruptured appendix had been worse than they initially thought. But while I was lying in that bed, recovering from surgery and pumped full of antibiotics, my father and his team were working around the clock to build our case. Derek Morrison, my private investigator friend, turned out to be worth every penny I'd never had to pay him. We'd grown up together, played football together in high school, been best men at each other's weddings. When my father called him that first night and explained the situation, Derek had dropped everything to help. "Brandon's been there for me through 2 divorces and a bankruptcy," Derek told my father. "I'm not going to let some cheating wife and piece of garbage brother destroy him." Derek's investigation uncovered things I never would have suspected. Elena and Tyler hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been planning to take everything I'd built and disappear together. Tyler, my younger brother by 3 years, had always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way into or out of anything. He'd bounced from job to job his entire adult life, never quite finding his footing. I'd helped him out more times than I could count, loaned him money he never paid back, gave him jobs at my construction supply company when he needed work. And the whole time, he'd been sleeping with my wife and plotting to steal my business. Derek found emails between Elena and Tyler going back 18 months. Before they'd even started the physical affair, they'd been emotional partners, complaining about me, about how boring I was, how predictable, how they both deserved more than the life I could give them. Reading these emails, Derek told me during one of his hospital visits, it's like they were building each other up to justify what they were planning to do. The emails detailed everything, how Tyler had convinced Elena to start skimming money from my business accounts. Small amounts at first, just a few $100s here and there that I wouldn't notice, then larger amounts as they got bolder. They'd been planning to wait until they had $100,000 saved, then Tyler was going to convince me to invest in a fake business opportunity. Once I transferred the money, they'd disappear together, leaving me bankrupt and alone. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the emails where they talked about me dying. If something happened to Brandon, Elena had written 8 months ago, I'd get everything. The house, the business, the life insurance. We wouldn't even have to steal from him piece by piece. Tyler's response had chilled me to the bone. Maybe we should help something happen, make it look like an accident. They never acted on that plan, thank God. But the fact that they'd even discussed it showed me exactly how far they'd fallen. These weren't people who loved me and made a mistake. These were predators who saw me as a resource to be exploited and eventually discarded. My father read those emails with his reading glasses perched on his nose, his face getting redder with each page. When he finished, he looked at me with eyes full of sorrow. "Brandon, I'm so sorry. I brought that boy into this world. I raised him. And somehow he turned into this." "It's not your fault, Dad," I said, though part of me wondered if Tyler had always been this way, and I'd just been too blind to see it. "No," my father said firmly, "it's not. but it is my responsibility to make sure he faces consequences. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Patricia Vance, my lawyer, was a force of nature. She was in her late 50s, with steel-gray hair and the kind of sharp intelligence that made opposing counsel nervous. She'd handled some of the biggest divorce cases in the state, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when her clients had been wronged. "Brandon," she said during one of her hospital visits, reviewing documents on her tablet, "we have enough evidence here to not only win the divorce, but to pursue criminal charges against both Elena and Tyler for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Criminal charges?" I repeated. Patricia nodded. "They stole nearly $50,000 from your business accounts. That's felony theft. The emails where they discussed staging your death could potentially be conspiracy to commit murder, though that's harder to prove since they never actually took steps toward it. But at minimum, we're looking at multiple felonies." I thought about that. Tyler in prison? Elena with a criminal record? Part of me, the part that still remembered the brother who taught me to ride a bike and the wife who used to make me breakfast in bed, wanted to say no. Wanted to just take the divorce and move on. But then I remembered Tyler's voice on that phone call, laughing while I was dying. I remembered Elena's smirk when she told me how easy it had been to fool me. And I realized that mercy to people like that wasn't kindness. It was weakness. "File the charges," I said. Patricia smiled, and it was the smile of a shark that had just spotted blood in the water. "Good, because I've already drafted everything. I just needed your approval to proceed." While I was still in the hospital, Patricia filed 3 separate legal actions. First, divorce proceedings with a motion to freeze all assets and prevent Elena from accessing any of our joint accounts. Second, a civil lawsuit against both Elena and Tyler for theft, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Third, she forwarded all the evidence to the district attorney's office with a request to file criminal charges. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Elena was served with divorce papers at her mother's house, where she'd been staying since I kicked her out of the hospital. According to Derek, who had someone watching her, she'd screamed at the process server and thrown the papers in his face. Tyler was served at his apartment, and he apparently tried to run. The process server had to chase him down in the parking lot. The criminal charges came 2 days later. The district attorney's office reviewed the evidence and agreed that there was enough for prosecution. Tyler and Elena were both arrested on the same day, charged with felony theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and embezzlement. The bail was set at $50,000 each, which meant they each needed to come up with $5,000 to get out. Neither of them had it. The money they'd stolen was frozen by court order, and neither of them had any other assets. Tyler called my father from jail, begging him to post bail. I was there when the call came in, finally home from the hospital and recovering in my bedroom. My father put it on speaker so I could hear. "Dad," Tyler said, his voice cracking, "you have to help me. I can't stay in here. These people are animals. I'm scared." My father's voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "You should be scared, Tyler. You stole from your brother. You slept with his wife. You laughed while he was dying. And you're going to pay for all of it." "Dad, please," Tyler begged. "I'm your son. You can't just abandon me." "You abandoned this family the moment you decided to betray your brother," my father replied. "You made your choices, Tyler. Now you live with them." He hung up, and we sat in silence for a moment. Then my father turned to me. "I know that was hard to hear. He's still my son, and part of me wants to help him. But Brandon, if I do that, I'm telling him that family loyalty means nothing, that he can hurt the people who love him and face no real consequences." "I know, Dad," I said. "You're doing the right thing." Elena's mother tried a different approach. Lucille Warner showed up at my house 3 days after the arrests, ringing the doorbell insistently until my father answered. I listened from the living room as she pleaded with him to drop the charges. "Richard, please," she said, her voice desperate. "Elena made a mistake. She's sorry. You can't ruin her life over one mistake." "One mistake?" My father's voice was incredulous. "Lucille, your daughter stole $50,000 from my son. She had an affair with his brother for over a year. She laughed while he was dying in a hospital. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of calculated cruelty." "She's my only daughter," Lucille said, and I could hear her crying. "If she goes to prison, her life is over. She'll have a record. She'll never be able to get a decent job. Please, can't we work something out?" I walked to the door then, standing next to my father. Lucille's face was streaked with tears, her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. "Mrs. Warner," I said quietly, "did Elena tell you that she and Tyler discussed killing me for the insurance money?" Lucille's face went white. "That's not true. Elena would never—" "It's in writing," I interrupted. "Emails between her and Tyler, planning how they could make it look like an accident. The district attorney has copies." Lucille staggered backward like I'd hit her. No, that can't be real." "It's real," my father said. "And that's why we're not dropping the charges. Your daughter isn't just a cheater, Lucille. She's a criminal who was planning something far worse than theft." We closed the door on her, and I felt no satisfaction, just a deep, hollow ache where my family used to be. The trial took 6 months to get to court, but when it did, it was a bloodbath. Patricia Vance brought everything she had, and the prosecution followed her lead. They called the emergency room nurse who'd made that first phone call and heard Tyler and Elena laughing. They called my father, who testified about the secret bank accounts and the stolen money. They called Derek, who presented a timeline of the affair with photos, hotel receipts, and credit card statements. But the most damaging testimony came from the emails. The prosecutor read them aloud in court, and I watched the jury's faces change from neutral to disgusted. When they got to the part where Elena and Tyler discussed staging my death, 2 of the jurors looked physically ill. Elena's lawyer tried to argue that the emails were just fantasy, venting between 2 people who felt trapped. But Patricia destroyed that argument on cross-examination. "If my client was just venting when he said he wanted to murder someone," she asked Elena, "would you think that was acceptable?" Elena, on the witness stand, could only stammer. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Tyler got 3 years in state prison for theft and fraud. Elena got 2 years, plus 5 years probation. They were also ordered to pay restitution of $50,000 plus interest and all legal fees. The civil lawsuit was even more devastating. Since they'd been convicted of criminal charges, the civil case was essentially decided. The judge awarded me $200,000 in damages, $50,000 for the money they stole, and $150,000 in punitive damages for their egregious conduct. Neither of them had any assets to pay it, so the judgment would follow them for the rest of their lives. Any money they earned, any property they acquired, I could legally take it until the debt was paid in full. After the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse with my father and Patricia. The local news cameras were there, asking for statements. Patricia handled it like the professional she was. "Justice was served today," she said. "2 people who betrayed the trust of a family member and committed serious crimes have been held accountable. This sends a message that theft and fraud will not be tolerated, even among family." That night, my father and I sat in his living room, the room where I'd spent countless Sundays watching football games and holidays opening presents. It felt different now, smaller somehow, like something essential had been carved out of it. "How are you really doing, son?" my father asked. I thought about that. How was I doing? My wife was going to prison. My brother was going to prison. My marriage was over. The family I'd thought I had turned out to be a lie. "I'm better than I was 2 weeks after that surgery," I said finally. "Back then I was just angry and hurt. Now I feel like I got closure, like I can actually move forward." My father nodded. "That's good. That's healthy. And Brandon, I want you to know something. I'm proud of you. You handled this the right way. You didn't let your emotions control you. You built a case, you followed the law, and you got justice. That takes real strength." 6 months after the trial, I was a different person. I'd sold the house Elena and I had shared, unable to stand being in a place where she'd betrayed me for so long. I bought a smaller place closer to my office, modern and clean with no memories attached. The construction supply business was thriving. Turns out removing the person who'd been embezzling from your company is great for the bottom line. I'd hired a new accountant, implemented better controls, and actually saw my profit margins improve by 30%. I'd also started dating again, though I was taking it slowly. Trust didn't come easily anymore, and I was okay with that. Better to be cautious than to end up in another situation like Elena. My father and I had grown closer through all of this. We had dinner together twice a week now, and he'd become more involved in the business, offering advice based on his decades of experience in construction. Tyler was scheduled for release in 2 years with good behavior. Elena would be out in 18 months. I'd thought a lot about what I'd do if they reached out to me after their release. Would I forgive them? Could I? The answer was complicated. I didn't hate them anymore. That burning rage I'd felt in the hospital had cooled into something more like indifference. They'd made choices that destroyed our relationship, and they'd faced consequences for those choices. That was justice. But forgiveness? That was something I hadn't figured out yet. One Sunday morning, about 8 months after the trial, I was at my father's house for our usual breakfast when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something made me answer. "Brandon?" The voice was tentative, uncertain. "This is Emily." Emily was Tyler's ex-girlfriend from college, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Emily, hey, what's going on?" I heard about everything that happened with Tyler and Elena. I wanted to reach out sooner, but I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from me." "It's fine," I said. "What's on your mind?" There was a long pause. Then Emily said, "I wanted you to know that Tyler did this before, when we were together. He had an affair with my younger sister. They planned to take money from my father's business and run away together. I found out and stopped it before they could, but I never told anyone. I just broke up with him and moved on. I should have warned you. I should have said something." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Emily, that's not on you. Tyler made his choices." "I know, but if I'd spoken up, maybe you wouldn't have gone through all this. Maybe you would have seen who he really was before he could hurt you." After we hung up, I told my father what Emily had said. He sat there in silence for a long moment, then shook his head. "Tyler's been this way for a long time then. It wasn't just Elena's influence or a moment of weakness. This is who he is." "Yeah," I agreed. And knowing that actually makes me feel better, because it means I didn't miss some obvious sign. He was just good at hiding who he really was. My father reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Brandon, you're going to be okay. You're going to build a good life without them. And one day, you'll look back on all this and realize that losing them was the best thing that ever happened to you." I wanted to believe that. And sitting there in my father's kitchen, eating the breakfast he'd made, talking about the future instead of dwelling on the past, I thought maybe he was right. The human capacity for betrayal never stops amazing me, but neither does our capacity for resilience, for rebuilding, for finding out what we're really made of when everything we thought we knew gets torn away. I survived that ruptured appendix, and I survived the rupture of my family. Both left scars, but both taught me something important about what matters and what doesn't. Trust matters, loyalty matters, integrity matters. And when people show you they don't value those things, when they laugh while you're dying and steal from you while you're sleeping, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is let them go and never look back. That's what I learned lying in that hospital bed, listening to my wife and brother laugh about my possible death. And that's the lesson I carry with me every single day. If this story resonated with you, if you understand what it means to be betrayed by the people you trusted most, please leave a comment sharing your experience. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our pain is the first step toward healing. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more real stories about people who faced betrayal and found the strength to fight back. Hit that like button if you think Brandon did the right thing. Thanks for watching, and remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you respond when they show you who they really are.